Alex tapped the Go Live button, a small, familiar rush of adrenaline hitting him as the counter in the corner of his screen instantly jumped from 0 to 50 viewers. It was 1 a.m. on a Tuesday, prime time for his small but devoted community of night owls and insomniacs. His setup was deliberately cozy. Warm LED strips cast a soft orange glow on the shelf behind him, filled with vintage video game cartridges and slightly dusty sci-fi novels. He was wearing his favorite worn-out hoodie, a half-eaten bag of chili cheese Fritos within easy reach. This was his safe space, his little digital lighthouse in the lonely hours of the night. Alright, night owls, welcome back to the late-night grind. Alex's voice was bright and easygoing, his eyes flickering between his main monitor and the chat box scrolling on the side screen. Tonight is another chill and chore stream. Just me doing some late-night work, got a lot of video editing to catch up on, and you guys providing the good vibes and existential dread. He picked up a Frito, crunching loudly into the mic. Wait, was that too loud? Sorry. Rookie mistake. Anyway, chat, how's everyone holding up? Anyone else fighting the urge to just give up and order pizza at this insane hour? The chat instantly lit up. No Sleep Squad, hey Alex. Pizza Lord 7, the pizza struggle is real. Moonlight Coder, Crescent Moon back for the chill. What song is this? Gamer Gal, send Fritos. Wanderer_34, what work are you editing tonight? Alex grinned, picking out a few messages. Pizza Lord, you know the struggle. Moonlight Coder, this is Lofi Beats to Exist to Classic. And Wanderer, it's the review of that vintage Japanese RPG, the one that requires 30 hours of grinding. The actual grinding was less work than editing the grinding footage. He gave a dramatic sigh for comedic effect, running a hand through his slightly messy brown hair. The camera, a high-quality DSLR, was mounted securely above his monitor, capturing a perfectly framed shot of him and the comforting, slightly cluttered background. He was careful about his setup. He wanted the viewers to feel like they were sitting right there next to him. The light was perfect, the background noise non-existent save for the gentle lofi music and his own voice. Everything was normal. Everything was safe. As Alex leaned forward to adjust the volume on his lofi playlist, bringing his head closer to the microphone, a tiny disturbance occurred. In the extreme upper right corner of the video frame, where the wall met the ceiling and the furthest shadow of his desk lamp cast a faint gloom, a flicker happened. It wasn't a screen tear or a lag, it was a pure, absolute negation of light. A momentary, black, vertical line, thinner than a pencil stroke, appeared and vanished in less than a tenth of a second. It was nestled exactly in the most overlooked, peripheral spot, the corner where no one, not even Alex, ever focused their attention. It was a space so close to the camera lens that it was practically in the camera's blind spot, yet it had appeared on the feed. Alex, engrossed in finding the right volume level, noticed absolutely nothing. The chat, a cascade of rapid-fire text, was too busy discussing the merits of pineapple on pizza to register the microscopic anomaly. Spicy take, pineapple is a crime. Pineapple fan, it belongs on pizza. Alex, agree or disagree? Midnight Rider, just joined. How many viewers tonight? Deep Diver _ I've been grinding that RPG too. You have my sympathy. One single message, however, flew by almost instantaneously and was immediately swallowed by the tide of pizza debate and greetings. Viewer_X_09. Did anyone else see that? It was an easy message to miss. A common chat interaction, perhaps referring to the volume adjustment, a perceived lag, or simply a viewer being weird. Alex certainly missed it, already moving on to the next topic. Okay guys, let's keep the stream theme on track. Alex chuckled, shaking his head. No pineapple wars on the midnight stream, please. I'm trying to maintain my sanity here. Tonight's goal is to get through the first 2 chapters of this editor's notes. Wish me luck. This is the boring part, but stick around, maybe we'll pull an all-nighter. He shifted his keyboard closer, settling into the familiar rhythm of work. The soft music played on, the warm light bathed his room, and the chat continued its friendly, banal chatter. He took another Frito, the crunchy sound filling the comfortable silence. The atmosphere was perfect, cozy, familiar, and utterly safe. The viewer was now comfortably situated, prepared for a long, dull, but pleasant evening. They had been lulled into security by the banality of the routine, completely unaware that for a fleeting moment, the digital window they were looking through had cracked, and something had peered back. The comfortable routine had just begun, but the subtle, sharp hint of absolute wrongness was already woven into the fabric of the video feed, a secret held only by the playback in that one lone, unnoticed message. Alex had been clicking through timelines in his video editor for what felt like an eternity, The low hum of the lo-fi track the only sound aside from the rhythmic clicks of his mouse. He let out a long, theatrical yawn, leaning back in his ergonomic chair until the springs protested with a low, metallic groan. "Man, this footage is going to be the death of me," he announced to the chat, rubbing his eyes with the heel of his hand. He stretched both arms high above his head, interlocking his fingers. His whole body momentarily curved away from the desk, his face contorting in a look of sleepy exhaustion. As his right arm came down, he paused to cover his mouth with his hand for a second, catching another yawn. It was in that fractional pause, the moment his hand shielded his face, the moment Alex was physically and mentally distracted from the camera, that the absolute blackness returned. It was no longer a flicker. It was a definite, distinct shape. In the extreme upper right corner of the stream feed, the shadowed crevice where the wall met the ceiling seemed to deepen impossibly, pulling the light out of the frame. A column of pure negative space, featureless and absolute, appeared. It wasn't flat against the wall. The shadows around it suggested a depth, a void that had been peeled back. It wasn't large, maybe a foot tall, but its appearance was stark, undeniable, and wrong. It was a shape that shouldn't exist in a well-lit room, standing vertically in the spot where the camera's focus was weakest, just outside the stream's central action. It remained for perhaps 2 full seconds. Then, as Alex dropped his hand and straightened up, blinking and ready to talk to the chat again, the shape smoothly retracted, vanishing completely, leaving behind only the normal, faint shadow of the ceiling. Alex leaned forward, a genuine smile on his face. "All right, I'm awake now. Had a good stretch. Sorry if that was TMI, chat." But the chat was no longer mundane. It had instantly transformed from a flowing river of light chatter into a torrent of panicked, capitalized messages. The pizza debates were gone, replaced by pure alarm. "No sleep squad, OMG. What was that? Midnight Rider. Alex, look at the VOD. Look at the corner. Gamer gal, IT was there. I saw it. Viewer _X_09. See? I told you. Wanderer _34. Rewind. Please rewind. Pizza Lord 7. I'm actually shaking right now. I'm not joking. Moonlight Coder. That was not a glitch, Alex. That was a shape." Alex squinted at the rush of text, instantly noticing the change in tone. He sat up straighter, his cheerfulness dissolving into genuine confusion. Whoa, hold up," Alex said, leaning in. "What's with the caps lock? Did I miss something? Did the cat jump on the desk? No, Machi's asleep." He glanced around the room quickly, looking for an obvious disturbance, a reflection, or a bug that might have triggered the panic. The room was empty, still and quiet. "Glitch? What glitch are you guys seeing?" "My feed looks perfectly fine on my monitor here," he insisted, pointing a finger toward the display that showed his stream preview. "My frame rate is solid, no dropped frames, connection is green. It was probably just an artifact on your end. Are you guys getting a bit laggy? It's pretty late." The viewers' frustration only mounted, knowing they had seen a concrete horror that Alex was completely blind to. They were screaming warnings across a chasm of digital delay and stream lag. "No sleep squad, no. It was in the stream itself. Upper right. Midnight Rider, it happened when you covered your face. When you couldn't see it. Deep diver _ it was a void. Like a shadow with edges. Go back on your feed now." Alex scrolled back through the chat, trying to piece together the alarm. He saw the repeated, frantic mentions of the corner and the timing. He let out a nervous, almost forced laugh. "Okay guys, alright. I see what's happening." He threw his hands up in mock surrender. "This is a team effort, right? You guys are trying to give me my late-night adrenaline fix. This is a prank, right? Someone is spamming a joke about a shadow in the corner." He tapped his monitor screen with his finger, right near the corner the chat was focused on. "See this spot? Perfectly fine wall. Just a wall. You guys are trying to spook me. It's too late for jump scares, honestly, I don't have the energy for it." His smile, though intended to be reassuring, was starting to look thin, slightly strained. He was performing nonchalance, but the intensity of the chat was starting to pierce his barrier. "I'm telling you, I'm not seeing anything here," he repeated, his tone slightly more firm, as if trying to convince himself as much as the viewers. He made a show of leaning back to look directly at the corner of the room, raising an eyebrow. "Just shadows from the lamp. No demons, no glitches, just me, my Fritos, and endless video editing." The horror had been brief, perfectly timed, and completely invisible to the protagonist. The viewers had been given the terrifying knowledge that something was in Alex's room, close enough to the lens to be captured, and that it had chosen the one moment Alex was distracted to make its move. The comfort of the safe, mundane stream had been irrevocably shattered, replaced by a seed of cold, sharp paranoia felt only by the silent, watching audience. They were witnesses to a threat their favorite streamer refused, or perhaps was unable to acknowledge. Alex spent the next 30 seconds trying to calm the chat, but the barrage of panicked messages only seemed to intensify. The humor he tried to inject was completely gone, replaced by a low-grade, simmering annoyance. He closed his video editing software, realizing he couldn't concentrate on work with the chat constantly demanding he check his camera settings. "Okay, look, seriously guys," Alex said, his voice taking on a slightly sharper edge. He leaned his elbows on the desk, folding his hands. "It's an older DSLR, sometimes the feed compresses weirdly in low light. That's all it is. There is nothing in my room. It's just me, a wall, and a very intense stream chat tonight. Wanderer_34. It's intelligent, Alex. It only shows up when you don't look. Moonlight Coder, we are all seeing it. Please believe us. PizzaLord7, don't dismiss us. It's still in the corner." He sighed, running his hand back through his hair again, the small furrow in his brow deepening. "It's still there? You guys are dedicated to this bit, I'll give you that. Fine. You know what? I'm gonna grab a drink. Maybe the break will let the glitch fix itself. I need some water, my throat is dry from all this defending of my boring room." Alex pushed his chair back with a squeak and stood up, moving swiftly out of the camera frame to the left, towards the door where his small mini-fridge was kept. He was gone from the center of the screen, leaving only the brightly lit desk, the empty chair, and the familiar, comforting background wall. The instant Alex's entire body vanished from view, the shadow moved. It didn't flicker or fade, it stepped. The column of pure blackness in the upper right corner detached itself from the wall, pulling forward and down slightly. It retained its absolute light-negating form, but it was now undeniably three-dimensional and mobile. It was no longer pressed against the ceiling, it was now standing upright about halfway down the height of the wall, and had shifted maybe 6 inches towards the center of the frame, bringing it slightly closer to the empty chair and the desk. The movement was slow, deliberate, and silent, completely unlike a stream error or a camera shake. The entity was exploring. It was utilizing the window of opportunity provided by Alex's absence, taking full advantage of the stream's focus on the empty main stage. The chat, already frantic, erupted into pure, digital pandemonium. "No sleep squat, IT moved. It actually moved. Gamergal, alone. It's only moving when he's alone. Midnight Rider, don't come back yet, Alex. Go back to bed. Viewer_09, get out of the room now. Deep Diver_, if it was a glitch it wouldn't step like that. It's watching the chair." The viewers felt a profound, sickening surge of helplessness. They were witnessing a predatory act unfolding in real time. They saw the intelligence, the calculation in the shadow's timing. It was reacting to Alex's physical presence, not just his camera view. And they had absolutely no way to bridge the gap and deliver a warning that would be taken seriously. They were reduced to frantic, useless text messages. The shadow stood there for a long moment, a column of absolute, unnatural darkness against the soft orange glow of the background, dominating the now empty stream scene. It seemed to linger, perhaps waiting for Alex's return. Then, the soft clink of a glass on the desk was heard just off camera, followed immediately by Alex's footsteps. The shadow didn't retreat, it snapped back. In a movement faster than its advance, it zipped back into the extreme upper right corner, flattening itself against the crevice and becoming nothing more than an improbable absence of light. Just another faint, ignorable shadow in a well-lit room. Alex walked back into the frame, holding a tall glass of water. He took a long, exaggerated gulp. Much better," he said, setting the glass down and sitting in the chair. He looked at the chat, which had not calmed down. If anything, the messages were now more desperate and fragmented. "Okay guys, what is it now?" Alex frowned, the fatigue from the late hour combining with the stream's bizarre mood. He picked up his Fritos bag and took another bite, though the crunch was less cheerful this time. "Still on the ghost kick? Look, I walked around the whole room. Nothing fell, nothing moved, there's not a single dust bunny big enough to scare you guys. PizzaLord7, it went back. It went back the second you came in. Moonlight Coder, it's playing a game, Alex. You can't leave the frame. Gamergal, just unplug the camera. Please." Alex rubbed his eyes again, genuinely frustrated now. "I'm getting a bit annoyed, guys, honestly. If this is a massive synchronized raid prank, it's pretty well coordinated, I'll give you credit. But you're disrupting the flow. My stream is fine. My room is fine. It's just shadows. He picked up his video editing notes, trying to force the stream back onto its original, mundane track. He tried to ignore the chat to focus on the notes, but his eyes kept darting back to the torrent of alarming text. He felt the weight of their insistence, the collective anxiety of hundreds of people telling him a terrifying, impossible truth. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he believed in his community. The conflict caused a low, insistent hum of dread beneath his professional composure that he paused, lowering the notes. His eyes flickered up, not to the chat, but quickly and almost instinctively to the upper right corner of his room, the spot the chat kept referencing. He saw only the wall. But the seed of paranoia was deeply rooted now, planted by the entity's calculating movement in his absence, a movement only the helpless audience had been forced to witness. Alex was oblivious, but the viewer knew the truth. The shadow was intelligent, patient, and it considered Alex's safe space its hunting ground. The stream was now stuck in an uneasy silence. Alex was ostensibly working. His mouse clicks were regular and he was scrolling through his editing timeline, but the easy rhythm was gone. The casual chat had been replaced by a low, persistent hum of anxiety, occasionally broken by bursts of caps lock panic. Alex's face was etched with irritation and a rapidly growing internalized doubt. He was trying hard to ignore the chat, treating the shadow panic as a distraction, but his eyes kept involuntarily flicking to the scroll box, catching phrases like, "It's still there," and "Don't look away." He reached for his phone, which sat face up next to his keyboard. He hadn't checked his notifications in a while. As he unlocked it, a text message from a friend made him pause. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he let out a short, surprised chuckle, shaking his head slightly at the screen. In that brief moment, eyes fixed on the small, glowing screen of his phone, Alex's attention was completely diverted. Up in the corner, the dense, light-absorbing shadow reacted. It didn't step. This time, it performed a much more nuanced, chilling action. As Alex tilted his head slightly to the side while reading the amusing message, the upper portion of the black form in the corner subtly leaned forward and tilted its own mass in a chilling mimicry of Alex's gesture. It was less a physics-defying movement and more the slow, deliberate settling of a liquid mass, suggesting it was watching, observing Alex's reaction, and finding some dark amusement in it. The viewers, locked in their helpless observer status, watched the entity study their streamer. The chat exploded yet again, a fresh wave of terror washing over the feed. "No sleep squad, it's copying you, Alex." Wanderer under 34, it tilted its head. "Did you see that? It's playing with him." Gamer gal, put the phone down. It moves when you're distracted. Moonlight coder, the eyes. Did anyone see a shimmer? Alex finally looked up from his phone, having typed a quick reply, and saw the renewed frenzy. He sighed deeply, running a hand over his face. "Guys, I just checked the text from my friend, nothing crazy. Can we please?" He broke off, his eyes widening slightly. His gaze fixed on a small, red Sharpie pen that had been sitting near the edge of his mousepad. Just out of the direct line of the camera, and definitely out of Alex's immediate peripheral vision, the Sharpie slowly, almost imperceptibly, rolled half an inch off its initial position. It was a minuscule movement, yet impossible, as the desk was perfectly level. The shadow in the corner, though now still again, seemed to possess a deeper, more satisfied darkness, as if energy had just been expended. Alex stared at the pen, then back at the chat. He tried to laugh it off, but the sound caught in his throat, coming out as a dry, weak cough. Did my desk just vibrate?" Alex asked, his voice losing its previous tone of annoyance and gaining a brittle edge of uncertainty. He placed a hand flat on the wooden surface, pressing down. "I thought I saw my pen roll. Maybe the washing machine is running downstairs? That's weird, I didn't think I had laundry going." He looked directly at his phone, which was now vibrating with concerned messages from friends outside the stream, clearly tipped off by the increasingly panicked viewers. He silenced it quickly, not wanting to break the stream's focus. The tension in the room was suffocating, and Alex, though he couldn't name the source, was finally feeling it. A sudden, sharp drop in temperature hit him. It wasn't the kind of chill caused by an open window. It was a deep, localized cold that felt like a hole had been torn in the air right behind his chair. His neck hair stood up. He instinctively pulled the collar of his hoodie tighter around his throat. "Wait," he murmured, his eyes darting quickly around the room, no longer looking for a joke, but for a physical explanation. His breathing became noticeably shallow into the microphone. "Is it just me, or did it get suddenly freezing cold in here? I had the heat on. I feel like I walked into a freezer." He spun his chair slightly to the right, glancing at his room door, then behind him towards the unused bookshelf and the dark corners of the room. He didn't see anything. But in that instant his body turned, the shadow in the corner seemed to swell, absorbing more of the dim light around it, like a lung taking a deep, silent breath. Alex turned back to the camera, his face pale beneath the warm LED light. His eyes, dark and wide, searched the screen for answers. Driven by the vague, terrifying suggestions in the chat and his own sudden, inexplicable physical dread, Alex's gaze finally, fully drifted to the upper right corner of his room. The corner where the shadow was. He stared directly at the spot, holding his breath. He saw nothing. Just the ceiling, the wall, and the ordinary natural gloom of a corner in a dimly lit room. "There's nothing there," he whispered, the declaration empty of conviction. It sounded like a plea. He didn't look away immediately, though. He lingered on the corner for a full, agonizing second before slowly turning his attention back to the camera. The audience, having watched the physical manipulation of the pen, the chilling mimicry of the entity, and the palpable shift in the room's temperature, felt the full weight of the entity's increasing malevolence. It was playing with Alex, testing the boundaries of its power, proving to its captive audience that it was real, intelligent, and enjoying its game of terror. And Alex, though he denied the sight, was starting to feel the cold, terrifying evidence of its presence. Alex pulled his chair slightly closer to his desk, trying to reclaim some sense of normalcy, but his movements were stiff, his hands hesitant over the keyboard. The chill he'd felt lingered, a phantom sensation raising the hair on his arms. The chat, meanwhile, was relentless, a scrolling ticker tape of terror. Midnight Rider. Alex, you have to trust us. You are in danger. PizzaLord7. Screenshot the feed. Look at the screenshot. Deep Diver _. The camera signal is corrupted. It's in the corner. GamerGal, record your desktop, Alex. Prove it to yourself. Alex rubbed his temples, a sigh escaping his lips that was closer to a groan. The fear in the chat was too authentic to be an organized prank, yet the physical reality of his room, which he had just scoured with his eyes, stubbornly refused to cooperate. He was caught between his rational mind and the collective hysteria of his audience. Okay, stop, Alex commanded, raising his voice slightly. The temperature thing was weird, I admit, but I checked the windows, they're closed. Look, I know you guys are freaked out and I appreciate the concern, but if this is an actual thing, we need to prove it, right? Because I am looking at my room and I see nothing. But you guys keep saying it's in the feed. A thought struck him, a way to definitively disprove the whole situation and hopefully calm the audience down. It was the ultimate, logical counter-argument. Here's what we're going to do, Alex announced, his voice regaining some authority. You guys think it's in the stream, right? Well, I'm running OBS Studio, my main streaming program. The signal you see is exactly what OBS sees before it sends it to YouTube. If there's a shadow, it should be in my OBS preview. He navigated quickly on his desktop. The audience watched as Alex minimized his video editor and brought the full OBS interface onto his screen, overlaying it on the stream for the viewers to see. See, Alex said, pointing emphatically at the OBS window with his mouse cursor. The audience was now watching a stream within a stream, a recursive visual loop of Alex and his room. This is the source, the direct feed from the DSLR. Look at the preview window. The OBS preview window showed Alex, his desk, and the back wall, perfectly normal, perfectly lit. He zoomed the preview in slightly on the top right corner, where the chat claimed the entity resided. Right here, Alex stated, his tone gaining a distinct edge of triumphant relief. The infamous corner. Look closely. Bright light, solid wall, some natural shadow from the desk light, but no deep, void-like shape. No column of absolute blackness. Nothing. It's empty. Alex smiled, letting out a genuine, relieved chuckle. There you have it. The source signal is clean. It's got to be a weird compression issue or some artifacting happening either on your playback device or maybe on YouTube's side after the encoding. It's a glitch, guys. A harmless, annoying glitch. A wave of crushing despair and frustration washed through the chat. No sleep squad, and no. It's still there in the outer feed. Wanderer _34. Alex, we see it right next to your OBS window. Moonlight Coder, it's only in the signal that leaves your computer. It bypassed the source. Viewer _x_09. Look at the corner of your current stream video. Alex, completely satisfied with his logical proof, didn't bother looking back at the chat's increasingly desperate warnings. He had seen the clean source feed with his own eyes. The tension immediately drained out of his posture. See? Told you, Alex said, leaning back and picking up his Fritos again. He laughed, a bright, slightly shaky sound. You guys are officially too good. Someone needs to get hired by Hollywood for this kind of coordinated deepfake paranoia. I totally fell for it for a minute, I admit. You guys are too good at Photoshop in my head. As Alex relaxed, completely reassured by his successful self-deception, the entity in the final stream output, the one the viewers were watching, responded to his comfort. In the corner, now ignored and dismissed, the shadow deepened. It became a richer, more absolute black, and it moved again, not stepping but growing, expanding its presence outward and downward by another inch. It was now larger, clearer, and closer to the central action of the stream than ever before. It retained its form, a silent, predatory column of pure void, nestled just beyond Alex's field of vision and, crucially, beyond the reach of his own monitoring equipment. The cruel twist was complete. Alex had successfully convinced himself he was safe, achieving a temporary sense of relief. But in the eyes of the viewer, that relief was a terrifying, heartbreaking lie. The shadow was not in the source, proving it was beyond Alex's technical control. It was in the final broadcast, meaning it was somehow tied to the act of streaming itself, a parasite riding the digital signal. The helplessness the audience felt was total, a crushing realization that the entity was intelligent enough to manipulate the very technology Alex relied on, hiding only where Alex himself could not look. Alex was laughing at a ghost that was now closer and darker than ever before, his proof serving only as the entity's license to advance. Alex scrolled through the chat with a renewed sense of calm, though he still looked tired. He dismissed the remaining frantic warnings with easy confidence. Seriously guys, it's fine. It's an old camera. I'm going to reboot the feed after this and I bet that visual glitch disappears. See? Rational explanation. Everything's okay. Back to work. He minimized OBS, bringing the video editing suite back up, and focused intently on the small timeline on his screen. He managed about 40 seconds of silence, broken only by his mouse clicks and the lo-fi beat. He was starting to feel the stream settle back into its familiar, comfortable routine. Then a sound. It was faint, barely audible over the lo-fi track and sounded entirely out of place. It was a SAH noise like dry sand being scraped on concrete, followed by something even softer, an almost breathy tick-tick-tick. The sound wasn't coming through the speakers. It seemed to be coming from the room itself, just outside the range of Alex's voice microphone. Alex paused his scrolling, his finger hovering over the mouse wheel. His eyes narrowed and he cocked his head slightly toward the direction of the sound, the back wall near the unobserved corner. "Hold on," Alex murmured, his voice low and cautious. "Did you guys hear that? Sounded like white noise. Or static." He paused the lo-fi track completely. The sudden silence in the room was immense, amplifying the lingering coldness he felt. He listened intently, holding his breath. The microphone, now picking up only the ambient noise of the room, captured the sound more clearly. It wasn't static. It was an incredibly faint, high-pitched whisper. Not words, just a delicate, dry sound, almost like dry leaves being crushed, but unmistakably alive. While Alex was completely distracted, leaning forward with his ear turned towards the sound source, the back wall, the shadow made its most significant move yet. Shedding its remaining reluctance, the black mass in the corner detached completely and took 2 large, silent steps into the open space of the room. It was now clearly visible, a terrifying column of absolute blackness that had taken on an elongated, almost skeletal silhouette. It had moved well past the corner, standing maybe 3 feet from the edge of the frame, towering over Alex's empty chair. It was visibly larger and closer to the center of the frame, a distinct, light-sucking presence hovering near the back wall, observing Alex with unnerving patience. The chat, having been temporarily reassured by Alex's earlier proof, was now overwhelmed by the simultaneous audio confirmation and the visually aggressive move of the entity. The tone shifted from worried confusion to sheer, agonizing terror and command. "No sleep squad, get out. It's right behind you. Gamer gal, unplug the camera. Unplug everything. Midnight Rider, Alex, stop listening to the sound. Look at the stream. Deep Diver Unders, the shadow is huge now. Run, run. Wanderer Unders 34, is trying to get you to turn your back. It's a trick." Alex heard the renewed frenzy in the chat, but he dismissed it instantly, thinking they were just seizing on the new audio anomaly to continue their prank. He was focused entirely on the faint sound, which seemed to be emanating from the wall, near the baseboard. "No, it's not the mic," Alex insisted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I hear it in the room. It sounds like breathing or something scraping on drywall." He slowly pushed his chair back, preparing to stand up and investigate the source of the sound, a fatal investigative mistake. He was focused on the bottom of the wall, where his ears told him the sound was coming from. He had no reason to look up and see the towering figure of darkness that was now looming over the space he had just abandoned. "It's right here," Alex muttered, kneeling slightly to check the baseboard for any sign of a loose wire or a trapped mouse. His entire attention was downward and inward, completely focused on the small logical mystery that was distracting him from the monstrous one visible to millions. The shadow in the corner, satisfied with Alex's distraction, seemed to settle its mass, its silhouette now dominating the background. Its edges, while still soft, conveyed a sense of substantial, chilling weight. The fact that Alex's physical senses were now being manipulated, the cold, the whispers, proved that the entity was no longer just a digital parasite. It was closing the gap between the virtual stream and the physical world. The dread became almost unbearable. The viewers, watching their oblivious streamer bend down, inches away from the noise, with the immense predatory shadow standing silently and patiently behind his empty chair, felt a true heart-stopping urgency. The stream was no longer a chill hangout, it was a confined live-action horror scene, and the audience had been forced into the role of the silent, desperate chorus. Alex was moments away from making contact with the physical reality of the threat, and the chat's panicked pleas of "get out" and "run" were their final, useless shouts across the void. Alex was still crouched, his ear near the baseboard trying to pinpoint the source of the faint, dry whispering that seemed to cling to the air. The chilling sound had stopped the moment he bent down, but the unnatural coldness remained. He was ready to dismiss the sound as a house settling or a rodent in the walls when the unthinkable happened. A few feet above his head, on the shelf containing his retro game collection, a heavy, framed Akira poster, one he'd owned for years, secured with heavy-duty mounting putty, suddenly slid off the shelf with a grating scrape. It didn't fall entirely but tipped forward, slamming its top edge against the wall with a loud, startling crack. The noise was immediate and violent, cutting through the silence like a gunshot. Alex didn't just jump. He vaulted backward, stumbling over his chair as he scrambled to get upright. His face, visible in the stream, was pure shock and adrenaline. He spun around, his head whipping toward the sound source, the back wall, his wide eyes searching frantically. The moment, as Alex spun rapidly to face the wall and the fallen poster, his body momentarily filled the center of the frame. His head, in that instant, eclipsed the upper right corner for the final time. It was a fleeting, necessary obstruction. When Alex's head snapped away, his eyes fixed on the poster on the wall, the view of the stream background was clear. The shadow was no longer in the corner. It was center frame. It stood directly behind Alex's chair, impossibly close to where his head had just been. It was no longer a vague column. It had taken on a terrifying, specific form. It was taller and thinner than any human, an elongated silhouette of profound, concentrated blackness that drank the surrounding light. Its structure suggested gaunt limbs and a sloping, narrow set of shoulders. The upper portion of the mass narrowed into an unnatural, elongated shape that suggested a head, tilted slightly as if examining the back of Alex's neck. And where its face should have been, there were two terrifying pinpricks, tiny, faint glints of white light that looked like reflections but were fixed and steady, like watching eyes staring directly at the streamer's spine. The entity was not moving, it was looming. It was substantial, physically manifest, and entirely occupying the space it had been slowly advancing toward all night. The audience, already at peak desperation, now went into an existential panic. The chat was no longer offering advice. It was a pure flood of horrified, unintelligible symbols and primal warnings. "No. Alex, look behind you. It's right there. God help us. The eyes. It has eyes. Run, 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 run." Alex, still facing the wall, was hyperventilating, his mind trying to reconcile the impossible noise with his clean feet. He reached out and touched the poster, confirming the putty had been ripped away. It just fell, he stammered, his voice raw with disbelief. "It was secured. There's no way." He slowly turned back to his desk, planning to address the chat and try to find a rational explanation. But as he looked at his monitor, he didn't even need to read the words. The sheer, terrifying volume of panic in the chat, the universal, capitalized terror scrolling before him, hit him like a physical blow. His eyes, darting from the frantic chat to the camera lens, filled with genuine, raw comprehension. The playful fear was gone, replaced by bone-deep, cold certainty. The realization wasn't born of logic. It was born of the collective, unadulterated terror of thousands of witnesses. He knew. He knew they weren't lying. His gaze snapped back toward the wall, over his own shoulder, his eyes catching the dark expanse of his room. He didn't turn his whole body, he simply twisted his neck back, his eyes searching the space directly behind his chair. He saw nothing. The entity was still only visible in the stream output, but Alex felt it. His breath hitched in his throat. His entire body went rigid. A profound, icy pressure, like a massive hand resting millimeters from his skin, settled on the air right behind his head. The cold was overwhelming, suffocating. His face, fully visible to the stream camera, twisted into an expression of sheer, silent horror. I feel it, Alex choked out, his voice barely a rasp. I feel the cold. He slowly raised a hand, not to touch the monitor, but to gingerly reach backward, centimeter by agonizing centimeter, toward the terrible, silent presence that the camera showed was standing directly over him. His fingers were shaking violently. The viewers watched the terrifying duality, Alex's pale, frightened face in the foreground, and the black, skeletal horror, the fixed pinprick eyes staring at the base of his skull, looming silently in the background, impossibly close. The entity was no longer playing, it was fully present, its digital leash gone. It was making its presence undeniably, physically felt, and the audience could only watch the terrible, final realization dawn on their favorite streamer. Alex's hand froze inches from the oppressive cold emanating from the space behind his head. He didn't need to turn around. The collective, desperate energy radiating from the chat and the icy certainty settling into his own heart confirmed the presence of the shadow. His body was locked in a state of terror, rigid and paralyzed. He slowly pulled his hand back, lowering it to the desk, his knuckles white as he grasped the edge of the keyboard. His wide, tear-filled eyes locked onto the camera lens, the digital window that had become his only remaining connection to reality. His mouth trembled as he tried to speak, forcing the words through his rigid throat. What is that? He managed, the question a trembling, broken whisper aimed not at the chat, but at the looming horror the camera witnessed. What are you? He looked down at the stream controls, a primal urge for safety overriding his fear. He had to stop the stream, unplug the camera, break the connection that had allowed this thing entry. He began to rise, pushing off the desk, his legs shaking violently, attempting to stand and reach the power button on the desktop tower sitting just out of view. It was too late. The shadow moved with a velocity that defied its massive, towering form. It didn't shuffle or step, it lunged, the black mass directly behind Alex's head suddenly blurred forward, expanding and rushing towards the lens in a single, silent, sickening explosion of non-light. The vague, elongated shape and the terrible pinprick eyes dissolved into an absolute, overwhelming tide of digital void. The last thing the viewer saw was Alex's face, a mask of pure, screaming terror, right before the dense, light-absorbing mass completely engulfed the foreground. The cut was jarring, clean and total. There was no static, no buffer screen, no stream-ended message. Just an overwhelming, final blackness that replaced the warm light and the terrified face. The silence that followed was heavy, profound, and far more terrifying than any jump scare. It hung there, thick and endless. Then, breaking the oppressive void, came a single, terrible sound. It was a high-pitched, gargling gasp, followed by a wet, strangled shriek, undeniably Alex's voice, horribly distorted, as if filtered through water or stretched across a massive, resonating chamber. It was a sound of absolute, violent termination, and it faded abruptly, swallowed by the continuing silence. The black screen remained for 5 agonizing seconds. The image slowly transitions. The absolute black recedes slightly, revealing the standard YouTube stream offline placeholder image. Alex's channel logo on a neutral gray background. The video ends on this still frame. But the horror is not quite finished. In the upper right corner of the stream offline screen, where the clean gray meets the channel logo, a small, subtle anomaly persists. It is the faint, almost imperceptible outline of the shadow, just a touch darker than the gray background, a persistent, chilling bruise on the digital canvas. It has followed the signal, proving it is not only still there, but is now integrated into the final, residual image of the channel itself. The video slowly fades out on this chilling, static image. If you just watched this to the end, you witnessed what happened to Alex. This isn't just a story, it's a found footage experiment into digital paranoia. We have access to the full archive of Alex's messages and stream files. We believe this shadow entity is tied to the act of streaming and is seeking its next connection. Don't let the feed die with Alex. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. Leave a comment. What did the shadow want? What was the sound? What do you think happened to Alex? Your theories might help us uncover the truth before the shadow finds its next camera.